If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
What is up? Pew, 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 pew. It's Biggs. It's Grindberg. I am down here in Louisiana of these here United States, reporting from Super Bowl adjacency. I'm actually in Red Stick, otherwise known as Baton Rouge. Been making the drive down to New Orleans. Today, I took a day off from the craziness of the driving schedule and everything and just sat home and binged the show Alone. They have an Australian version, and I just sat there eating my Raisin Canes going, yeah, I could do that. What's up, everybody? This is your favorite podcaster's favorite podcast, right? We're here to give you the lowdown on things that are happening in the offseason leading up to all of our ESPN and Yahoo redrafts coming up in about 6 months in August. So hang with us. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Go to fantasyfootballadvice.com and set up your membership and everything. Make sure you do it early so that you can get into our Jersey leagues once the season gets going. And we're happy to have you. Thanks for joining. What's up, Mike?
Hey, Biggs. Well, you know what? I'm in company of somebody that had some special week last week, and we're going to break it down. Biggs, our very own Biggs, was at the Senior Bowl. He was able to see these new rookies, this 2025 draft class coming in. You know, the Senior Bowl has some showcases of some of the guys that, you know, are a little less well known, and we're going to have the scoop from that. We're going to talk about the game itself, talk about 3 of our biggest takeaways. And yeah, Biggs, how was the week, buddy?
It was pretty phenomenal, other than getting absolutely sunbaked. I got to the point where, so you might all recall that in the Gulf states, just around the middle of January, they got like 8 inches of snow. So me coming from 50-degree California with 2 weeks of rain in the forecast, I was like, I'm going to pack for cold weather. I got here and it was in the mid 70s. Now in Louisiana, it's in the 80s every day. I went to college in the South. This is literally April weather. And that was at the end of January down here. So other than that, I had like my North Face jacket, like trying to block the sun out, and I'm sitting there just like heaving sweat. Other than that, it was phenomenal to be down there at field level, watching the kids go through their practice reps and stuff like that, and then watching the game. Pretty exciting finish to that game. It was a great experience, and definitely one that I will be returning to every year.
I love it. And you know what, Biggs? I think I might just be there with you next year. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with you, watching these rookies come into play. And first we'll talk about the game, and then we'll kind of talk about the week itself and kind of like what you noticed and kind of what, you know, the scouts are looking at that week. So let's talk about the game itself now. You know, the Senior Bowl, it had its moments, especially for the skill players. TCU's Jack Bech stole the show in the spotlight after he caught that game-winning touchdown from Memphis quarterback Seth Hennigan. And as the time expired, they secured that 23-19 win for the American team. Bech had, 6 catches, 68 yards, including that impressive flea flicker early in the game. Hennigan, who took over in the second half, completed 12 of 14 for 132 yards, leading to 2 fourth-quarter touchdown drives, showcasing pretty solid rhythm. Notre Dame's Riley Leonard started strong, hitting his first 6 passes and demonstrated poise, while Ole Miss Jaxon Dart made his mark as well.
Hey.
So some of these quarterbacks really, had some strong showings in a class that, there was a lot of skepticism about, and there still is. So we're going to have to talk about that a little bit further on in the show. But Ollie Gordon, from Oklahoma State and RJ Harvey from USC also had standout performances. Ollie Gordon, 6'1". He is a massive build at 233 pounds. He not only ran for a 33 yards, but he also delivered a 32-yard touchdown pass to Jaden Higgins. He's versatile, so it'll be interesting to see how Ollie Gordon shakes up. I know you're particularly high on him. I think you have him in your top 5 right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, it was a pretty good game. A lot of back and forth. So interesting to see kind of what your takeaways were from the game itself, Biggs.
Well, my biggest takeaway from the game is that the game was the most important part of the entire week. It was the practice reps. It was the watching guys in one-on-one drills. That's where the dogs came out. That last drive. So you have to understand it's national team. It's American team. I don't know the rhyme or reason or if there even is one for putting the teams together. But for the most part, the national was in the early practice session. The American was in the later practice session. And teams seemed to practice better. Their reps were better. And they were practicing against their own defenders on that squad. The American team they didn't practice as well. In fact, the worst quarterback during the practice sessions was Hennigan himself out of Memphis. So with that drive at the very end of the game, there were 2 minutes left, 2:06, something like that. And Hennigan just kind of marched down the field, finished the game, like you said, 12-14 or whatever it was, threw the last second touchdown to Jack Bech, who I got to interview and is an absolute dog. That dude is he's essentially going to look like the Puka Nacua of this class, where he's a later round guy, but he's very thick and strong, fast. He's a contested catch monster. In one of his interviews, he said, people keep asking me about 50-50 balls, and I say they're 75-25 balls because I have a 75% chance of catching them. I'm going to get that ball. It's my ball. And that mentality is exactly what he brought to the game. He scores the winning touchdown, but all of that was completely irrelevant. It was the practice sessions. It was the reps that they were taking. It was how good Jaden Higgins was beating people off the line. It was how good Jalen Noel looked in route running. Jaxon Dart looked every bit the quarterback one of the Senior Bowl throughout the practice sessions. And that kind of leads me to my top 3 underrated quarterbacks in this draft. Number 1 is Taylor Elgersma. This is a kid who's out of Ontario, Canada. He's a big Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I got an interview where I made him say, go Jets for Mike's Winnipeg Jets. Told him that wouldn't go public, so nobody's going to ever see it. Anyway, he came in. He went to a Canadian college. The Canadian college rules are closely aligned with Canadian Football League rules. So he was coming into a different game, but he showed poise in the pocket. He showed an accurate arm. Not a lot of strength there, but very accurate, very composed. This is a moment where he's coming into an environment where he's not really familiar. A lot of these kids, they played each other in college, or they came up going to the 7-on-7 camps together and things like that. There's a lot of familiarity with a lot of these players. Elgersma came in knowing nobody, and the moment was not too big for him. That's going to translate at the NFL level. He's going to make a team 6th round, 7th round. We're talking Brock Purdy, Tom Brady level of draft pick. But he has the opportunity, especially with his brain, the way that he can read defenses and the way that he can adapt from the Canadian game to this NFL style defensive scheming that he saw at the Senior Bowl. We might be onto something here. The other guy is Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck is a quarterback out of Louisville. He fits the size profile. I haven't dug into the production at Louisville. But here's the thing. Every team, the American and the National, their practice counterparts. So for the wide receivers, the D-backs that they were doing the one-on-one drills against, the D-backs against the quarterbacks, things like that. The defensive players that these players practiced against all week voted for their MVPs. And Tyler Shuck was the MVP of the American squad as voted on by the guys who were playing against him in defense. They were like, this kid's for real. Now, the narrative on this quarterback class is it's not very deep once you get past Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. But I'm here to tell you that there are a few guys who are going to work their way up the ranks. They may not have first-round draft capital, but they definitely have the skill set to succeed. And a few of them were on display in Mobile. The number one underrated quarterback, and the reason that I say underrated is because this guy is being talked about as having second-round draft ceiling. But we have some partners over at the Undroppables who have put together some analytic models. And FF Coder, in his analytic model, Jaxon Dart would have squeezed in at the quarterback 3 last year behind Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. That's ahead of J.J. McCarthy. That's ahead of Bo Nix, ahead of Michael Penix. All of those guys were top 12 picks. Jaxon Dart, analytically, is ahead of them. We also had Jax Falcone, who every year does his anatomy of a dynasty blank. Now, this is a redraft show, but it still stands. These are the players in college who, over the course of their college careers, profile to meet numbers of current top 12 fantasy quarterbacks based on their college production. And guess who hits every single criteria of being a top 12 quarterback except for like 2 metrics? Jaxon Dart. The kid gets the size. He's got the experience. He has the rushing yards. The only place that he's short a little bit is in his best year of touchdowns. It's supposed to be in the 40 to 45 range. He threw 29 at the most. And then the other one is he has a 3-to-1 touchdown and interception ratio. It's supposed to be 4-to-1. A lot of that is scheme. A lot of that was a kind of a pretty terrible year at USC as a sophomore. But Jaxon Dart is for real, you guys. So if you're looking for somebody who is going to be possibly exceeding his draft stock over the course of the next 2 months and is going to be the talk of the NFL draft for his meteoric rise, possibly into the top 10, it's going to be Jaxon Dart.
I love that call. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. He's wrapped up the draft boards right now. His performance, at the Senior Bowl looks good. And like you said, he's got the profile, he's got that rushing upside, he's got the size, and we're going to have to see how he can throw some touchdowns. But I mean, if he's got some weapons that he could be surrounded by, we shall see. I like that call, Biggs.
He didn't have the quantity of touchdowns, but he also had Quinshon Judkins on his team as a junior. He was in a Lane Kiffin offense, which uses a lot of RPO, and he showed that he can run. Now in college, if you get sacked, that counts against your yardage total. And one of the indicators of a top 12 dynasty finish as a quarterback is your best rushing season. You have over 400 rushing yards or over 450, something like that. His best was 629. That's with sacks counted against him. And he has a touchdown and interception ratio that is still better. It doesn't hit that 4-to-1 threshold, but that 3-to-1 is still better than a couple of top 12 quarterbacks who had a 2-to-1 or a 2.5-to-1 interception ratio. So while he doesn't hit every single criteria, he gets the majority of them, and he can run. Watch out for Jaxon Dart. He's for real.
I love it. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our second takeaway here, and that is kind of like this wide receiver class. It's known to be weak, but they have some strong physical wide receivers in this class, and I think it's got some talent that is going to maybe show up in the second or third round in your rookie drafts. I think there's a lot of solid talent in that later rounds, but you may not have those prolific early round guys like you would last year. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these wide receivers. Jaden Higgins, Jack Bech, we mentioned him already. These are 2 standout receivers that could make an impact down the line. Higgins, 6'3", 217 pounds. He showcased physicality, a trick play on a touchdown in the Senior Bowl game. He was under tight coverage and he used his size and body control to out-muscle defenders. So that's kind of like been the storyline behind these wide receivers. And if there is, some talent and something that can emerge out of that, I think it's these big body style wide receivers. Now, Bech, we talked about him. You had some comps to Puka Nacua, who I saw him with that physical style of play. I agree with you, Biggs. On the other wide receiver round, we had Higgins. We said that already. But what are some other guys you noticed there as a big play wide receiver, these big body guys that, may have caught your eye this week, Biggs?
Well, Amari Smith is one from Georgia who I got a chance to talk to him, and currently he is listed as he has a 4.2840. He ran track, was part of his 4x100 team that was a state champion in Florida, and he also was a state champion in the 200. So he has a good top speed that can get him around the track. I asked him if he had a goal, if part of his training regimen was to break 4.25, or maybe I said 4.2 at the combine. And he said, well, I don't want to overstep. I'll just say 4.25. That puts him in the conversation with Xavier Worthy and Deshaun Jackson for the fastest combine ever from a wide receiver. And he's got it. There was some talk about him having the dropsies when he was at Georgia. And the first couple days of practice, there were a couple balls that clanked off his hands. But after that, beginning with the third practice, or the end of the second practice, into the third practice, and then into the game, he was pretty much catching everything. The dude has speed to burn, and he's going to be a big play guy along the lines of a Xavier Worthy type. And then Jack Bech, can't say enough about him. He's from just down the road here in Lafayette, Louisiana. He was recruited by LSU as a tight end, a 6'1" tight end. And saw that he was kind of backed up on the depth chart, decided to transfer to TCU, where he was on a really, really deep squad with Savion Williams, who's coming out of the draft. I interviewed him, and he was able to mention a couple of his teammates. They all work really hard together. That's just the guys at the Senior Bowl that I saw practice. There was the East-West Shrine game. There also are guys that didn't show up. Savion Williams, aforementioned, from TCU. He's a big-bodied guy that chose not to work out of the Senior Bowl. Emeka Ibuka, who's a rising senior, he's coming out finally after he should have last year. He decided not to show up to the Senior Bowl too. I think they may have hurt their draft stock a little bit. And you've got some risers who are going to be coming hot on their heels, and hot on the heels of Trey Harris, Teteroa McMillan, and Luther Burden, who are kind of the consensus top three. But there were some things that I saw out of guys like Jack Bech and Jaden Higgins that I'm not spending. If I'm an NFL GM, I'm not spending top 10 draft capital on those wide receivers when I can get guys who are absolute dogs that can take over at high-level positions that are going to be later in the second and third round.
Sweet. Good call, Biggs. What about the tight end group? We have a lot of solid tight ends. We saw Arroyo kind of emerge this week. He's been the talk of the Senior Bowl in the tight end group. He probably caused some of these other guys to fade a little bit because of how well he performed. Why don't you talk about the tight end group and what you saw out of them?
Well, the tight end group is super, super deep this year, a lot like the running back class. You got Luke Lachey, who, if you're a helmet scout, he's an Iowa tight end. That equals high draft capital. You have Harold Fannin Jr., who comes from Bowling Green. It's a smaller school, but he was uber productive. He was at the Senior Bowl. Luke Lachey wasn't. You have kid from LSU. You had a kid from Nebraska. You had a kid from UCLA. You have Oronde Gadsden Jr. out of the University of Syracuse. All of these guys can absolutely play the tight end position. And then there was Elijah Arroyo. If there was anybody who absolutely flashed at the Senior Bowl and raised their stock to the point where they had every head in that stadium turned for 4 days and every talking head with his name on their lips for 4 days, it was Elijah Arroyo. That dude is an absolute beast. He was in the Miami offense with Cam Ward and didn't get a lot of run, but he showed that he is able to be physical. He's going to be an end zone target. He can out jump people. He's a great blocker. He has every skill that is necessary for a tight end to step in and mirror your rookie guys like Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts a couple years ago, Dalton Kincaid. He is right there in that class of tight end, and he's going to be able to produce right away. Nobody helped themselves as much as he did.
I love it. I love that call. And I wanted to hear from yours because, I saw a lot of tape from him this week. I saw a lot of, buzz around the Twitter space, and it's really exciting to see it from first view here and how much he rose up the boards here.
Look for him to go to a tight end needy team like Seattle, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Rams. They have Tyler Higbee. There are a bunch of teams out there who the Houston Texans, they like to pass. They can use a big body tight end who is successful in the run game and in the passing game, lining up in line, but also athletic enough to be performing like a big slot wide receiver out in his route running abilities. And Elijah Arroyo is that, and he will hit as a rookie, I promise.
There you go. Now we're already on our next year kind of predictions here. So this is already, let's take our receipts. Let's get you prepared for the 2025 season. And Elijah Arroyo is going to be up there, and he's going to be the talk of this offseason. Now, before we get into our number one take from the Senior Bowl, let's talk a little bit about our community space, the Fantasy Sports Advice Network, the platform. And, it's a growing community. We're also, adding some content arms like the baseball channel and the football and the basketball channel. So, we're growing here. Big's got anything to add to that, bud?
Go to fantasyfootballadvice.com.
There you go. Now, Big, we'll get into our number one take from the Senior Bowl. And that one, I think, is, we both took that one. It's got a strong running back class. And, the guys that showed up this week weren't the number one, the top guys that we were talking about. But a lot of these guys made some splashes like Ollie Gordon, Dylan Sampson, Devin Neal, and Brashad Smith. Wow. All showed some potential to make an immediate impact in the NFL. They all had some added PPR benefits too, some catching abilities. Ollie Gordon, 6'2", 233-ish pounds, it looks like. And he's the classic workhorse style, downhill running style back that, I know that Biggs really likes that style of run. So I knew he was going to be high on Ollie Gordon, and I was really high on him too. So what did you see from Ollie this week, Biggs? And are you still really high on him? There was some skepticism about his pass his pass protection. What did you see about that area of his game, and are you concerned about it moving forward?
Not concerned at all. He's fine, and he's a big body dude who's gonna mix it up. Ollie Gordon is solidly my RB3 in this class. I know that's a little bit higher than most people have him. Out of this Senior Bowl, we have to remember that Omarion Hampton and Ashton Genty were not a part of this. We also had some other running backs who weren't there. But of the guys that were there, they kind of fill out that back 7 of the top 10, throw 4 or 5 more guys in there. And then there are 5 guys probably that we are kind of sleeping on. This running back class is like 20 running backs deep. Ollie Gordon is my number 3 out of all of them. I think he fits the profile. And we're going to get into, right when we get to around the combine, I have some interesting data models that show production based on combine numbers. And the least corollary combine number for a running back that correlates to production in the NFL is 40 time. Now, there are other positions where 40 time is important. Running back is the least of them. So if you see a guy who's running a 4.55 or a 4.65 at the running back position, that's not a deal breaker. What you're looking for is ages when they come out, what year they broke out, things like that. We'll talk about that in future episodes. But right now, Ollie Gordon, except for the fact that he went to college for an extra year, he fits those. Then you have Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Like, seriously, you guys, especially in your fantasy drafts, this running back class is so just stocked full of guys who are going to win jobs over some of the high risers from last year. We've seen this over and over again. Bucky Irving takes over. Tank Bigsby takes over. We see these guys the year after they come in start winning jobs, and these are the guys who are going to be winning the jobs from those guys. So it's a huge running back class. You're gonna want to do 0 RB drafting, especially in your redraft leagues, because once Saquon and Derrick Henry are off the board, it's pretty much a free for all, and it remains to be seen who are going to slot into those top 15 other positions. So, it's a huge running back class.
Yeah, it's going to be the takeover. I think this year is going to be a pivotal year for running backs and tight ends. I think that it's just such a strong class for both these positions that I think there's going to be a huge evolution in that in the NFL coming next year. You're going to see a lot of tight ends emerge, and you're going to see a lot of these guys take over some backfields, and it'll be interesting to see where they shake out. I think landing spot is a huge thing here, and it's going to be interesting to see who goes to the Chargers and who goes to the Vikings, who goes to the Cowboys. There's some juicy landing spots, and it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. But such a deep class in the running back room, and for Superflex leagues and Dynasty, it may not be the most optimism going into this draft, but there definitely is some gems in those third and fourth rounds that, if you can get on them and identify them early, you're set to build yourself a championship. And that's what we do here on the Fantasy Forecast, Big. So awesome, man. Great week for you at the Senior Bowl. I was proud to see you out there, and you came out with some great content. I was following you the whole time, and I'm excited to see what you do this week at the Super Bowl, and then once again when you're back at the draft. So
Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl.
That's this week?
That is, man.
That's Eagles and Ravens, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nothing to do with the Chiefs.
I wore my red, white, and blue for the Bills.
There you go. I love it. I wore my Fantasy Forecast hat for the great show that we run. And yeah. All right, everybody. Well, our next show is going to be the Senior Bowl Risers, followed by the Senior Bowl Fallers. So check us out on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Grindberg and Biggs always bring in the heat. And we'll see you next time. Biggs, do what you do so well.
We hope you win.
Hope you win, folks. Peace.